All right, guys, we're going to talk about the graduated bob today. All right, welcome. We're going to talk about the graduated bob today. Our last class was the inverted graduated bob. This is the bob that we're just going to start to wrap that graduation around the head. All right, so the idea here is we can do the same thing as we talked about with shape before. You can either section this head off in the back into one section where you just work on that graduation and then you leave that top weight line to later. I prefer to do this all at once, the whole back in one line, if I'm trying to get rid of a weight line. If I'm trying to leave kind of a solid, more solid weight line, I'd probably then do the whole back in two pieces. This way, I'm gonna start to work on that graduation and concentrate on that, and then walk it out as I come to the side, and then later I can start to work on where I want my line to come through. Now that's very visual for me. I don't like to come in and then do these this graduation and then come back in with this horizontal layer and then establish the line from the back forward. What I like to do is work on the shape on the perimeter first as we come through and then transition. So basically that's what we're gonna, what I'll show you today is kind of how I would do it in the salon. That would be a lot more accurate, far less mistakes, and would rely heavily on your eye. One of the things that I see most in the G-bob on the floor and throughout walking around in the city and stuff is that often you'll see super strong ledges that are harsh on the eye, and then they come through to these super strong ledges on the sides that are harsh on the eye. And then also too, you don't really see a lot of super accurate, you see these cuts that are perfectly cut and they follow that guide, but they don't really make a lot of sense for their head shape, their texture, their density. So I want you to step back a little bit and look at this more about shape. Shape matters the most when you're doing these super aggressively shapy haircuts to begin with. You have to be somewhat loose because they can get into that Lego haircut territory extremely quickly. So just going through, and I'll do this in two ways here. So back, right, and we're coming, basically the nape would come up like that, right? So I'm not gonna show you that to you. So in the back, we're gonna basically take a section that's just above the occipital bone and then diagonal forward it out. It's not a steep diagonal forward. I want to get kind of to the back top of the ear on both sections. And what I'm trying to do is give myself anything and everything in this section that can be graduation later, right? Because you're not going to graduate over into the parietal ridge. That just doesn't make a lot of sense for the head shape. So we're basically going to graduate everything that dips into the head. Right, all this stuff that dips into the head. Now I borrow a little bit. This is why we go just above the occipital bone, so we get a softness that comes up through the occipital bone instead of coming to the occipital bone and then all of that weight falling at one singular point with the length there. So you'll find that if you go up a little higher, it'll be a little easier on you. Typically in the salon, if I'm doing this on someone who already has this haircut and this is an upkeep haircut, you're probably going to see me switch from two sections in the back to one full section in the back, and I just cut the shape as I walk down. It's simple. That shape's already in there. That way you're concentrated the full time on shape, which is really important with short hair. So just walking through this, very, very simple. I'm going to take that line down. I'm typically going to point cut because this is a viciously shapy and hard haircut to begin with. So if it gets a little tighter on the bottom, you might do some scissor over comb. You might even come in and do clipper over comb or even clippers with guards, right? In the bottom. That's a little bit harsher, but I've seen it done well where it can stay a little softer and more playful. But it really just all depends on the look you're going for, whether it's more androgynous or you want feminine or you want it to be more of a masculine cut. It's totally up to you. You just have to figure out the end goal of your shape. So as I come through, all you're gonna see me do is, in the last one, in the inverted, we inverted everything. In this one, we're just gonna travel that guide out, right? And what you'll see is, as I travel it, it kind of goes with the head shape. So, boom, 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 boom. And we're just gonna rock it. And I start in the back middle. I'm putting my guide in, and then I'm just traveling and walking out from there. I'm not necessarily trying to bring hair from this section to this section to cut. I typically do that with shape. So if I determine I want my shape to be here, and then I want to be as close as that, basically that's what I'm going for every time. I'm not taking the hair from here and bringing it over, because especially on short hair, it just can't travel that far. So it's just like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do that, because then you'll end up putting inversion in each section that you didn't really want to get there. So I find it's far easier and more effective to just travel it and then cut with the eye, okay? And then that way you're gonna make far less mistakes. There's so many times I watch people start to travel around that head shape, and then they've inverted in one way or the other, whether they pushed it or pulled it, right? And you're either getting shorter or longer as you turn around the head, and then you gotta go back through and do all this cutting in the head. Well, just cut it visually, put the shape in that you want from the get, and make sure that you're sat back a little bit in the stool to like make sure, or standing, to make sure when you're cutting it, you're watching that shape as you turn the head. Because you're gonna find that as you turn, sometimes you might invert the last section on purpose just to keep a little weight behind the ear. Now, if you're following a guide without thinking, you're never gonna make a decision to invert as you turn the head. All right, so give yourself that opportunity. We're gonna bring that hair down, start at our cut point, at our entrance point at the top of that graduation, and then just slowly work in as tight as we wanna go, right? Now, I can only go as tight as my fingers with the wet cut. So if I'm gonna go tighter than that, it's all gonna happen in the dry cut. All right, so walking. And so on this, it kind of looks like it's almost like a natural inversion coming out, but it's not. We're actually turning the head with the head shape, almost as if you pivoted off the top. And if you came into the top, you would basically be pivoting across. So if you did the whole section from the top, you would have came in here and cut this top section, right? And then pivoted for your next section across, right? And then the next section, right? And then pivoted. So just constantly working that guide. And notice that at the top of this section, I use the whole top of the guide every single time. What I see when people try to like move it, they actually get longer. All right, so use the entire top of the section of the guide every single time and pivot off of it. You won't make mistakes because you'll have the whole top of that guide as your entrance point, and a like really strong visual guide that you can cut off of coming through, making sure that you're not doing anything crazy with that line as you travel it around the head. All right, so pretty simple. And then after we're done with that, what I'm gonna typically do is, you can do it one way, you can do the whole back at once. Sometimes there's gonna be a necessity to come through and do diagonal forwards as you come through. I typically will do this. I'll typically cut the back exactly how I showed you. And then what I'll do is, I'll drop like a good size section here on the side. And then what I'll do is, I'll cut exactly the shape I wanna see coming around the face, okay? So whatever that is, on this section, I'm going to establish my perimeter line on the bottom part of the head, okay? And so what that's gonna do is, now it's gonna let me know how strong or how loose I can keep all of this stuff, and then what I'm doing with my layer in the back, if I'm starting to incorporate them now. If not before, then I would just use that and come through. Typically that's what I'm gonna do, so I'm going to show you that. As always, like depending on texture and density and stuff like that, you're gonna find different methods that work better for them to work through it, especially different lengths. Like if you were starting with length way down here, you're probably gonna separate this into something else. Me, I'm gonna lop it off almost into the shape right off the get to get that hair out of the way, and then I'm gonna come in and start cutting off of there. That's a personal preference. That's what I'm gonna do every time. And I'm probably gonna separate it into two sections on the whole back, like subdivide the back section into two other sections to work off of. Pretty simple stuff. Gets kind of confusing because there's just so many options, but you're just gonna find the thing that works the best for you, that allows you to get to the shape as quick as possible. Hairdressing is a very, very fluid business. It's a fluid thing. You have to allow yourself to make decisions, okay? If you're not allowing yourself to make decisions, you're going to mess up, and people are not gonna like their haircuts because the haircuts won't be built for them. Pretty simple. We're gonna think about this. Once I come in through here, it's basically just gonna be horizontal sections throughout from there, coming through, whether it's just the front half of the head or if it's the back half of the head, it makes no difference. I'm probably gonna cut my shape in there, and then I know this haircut, because it can be bulky and big and Lego-y from the get, is that I'm gonna come in and do some really wicked horizontal slicing on the whole top of the head that is the length. So it just depends on their density and their texture, however, how aggressive I get. And then what I want out of that. If I want it to be super heavy and shapy, I'm not gonna do a lot of that. I'm gonna leave a heavier shape. But if I want it to move, be loose, be more lived in, right? I'm probably gonna cut some of that negative space in there to let the haircut breathe. So we're just gonna go through that. The haircut I'm using today is the model from the last one. So we're gonna cut that haircut. We're gonna cut this haircut the best we can to that, because it already has a bang, it already has forward graduation, and now it already has graduated inversion, or the inverted graduated bob. All right, so let's get going on that.